Anyway, let's move on to some games that you've loved.
I've loved
recently.
Have I stopped loving them?
Well, you've not played 2 Point Hospital and you're not as big a fan of Overcooked as me.
Is that a polite way of saying things that I actually know something about?
Maybe.
Basically.
So, how is Yakuza Kiwami 2 coming?
So Yakuza Kiwami 2 is out. I've just recently platinumed Yakuza 6 and rocked straight onto Yakuza Kiwami 2 pretty much. I played something else in between, which we'll come on to in a bit. But it's really interesting going from Yakuza 6, which is the latest game in the series, the one that has, from start to finish, been put together last, and Yakuza Kiwami 2, which takes the graphics and the new engine of the Yakuza games and basically shoves a PS2 game into it.
How has that been handled, do you think, from what you've played so far?
It's weird because a lot of the early impressions and a lot of the early reviews, I think from IGN in particular, they said that this was almost the perfect Yakuza package. Don't agree with them.
No?
I think it's really obvious that this is a PS2 game, just from the structure of it. So Yakuza 6 and the early Yakuza games were very sort of like dungeony based type things. So you have your little open world bit. I don't like calling it open world because it's not open world. It's an area. You have your area that you do
micro world.
yeah. But it's really detailed.
Yeah.
So you have your little micro fights or whatever, and then you are almost locked into a building or a street or a dungeon or an area where you have to defeat a certain number of enemies, and all you do is fight. And then you have another sort of free kind of roam bit, and then you're back into the dungeon, and that's kind of the gameplay
That's how
loop.
they were, yeah.
Yeah, and then you upgrade and all that sort of stuff.
Whereas in Yakuza 6, it's a lot more free-flowing and a lot more... You can go between stuff and you can go out of the battles if you want to.
Yeah, so in Yakuza 6 and I say Yakuza 5 and even Yakuza 4, it was kind of more difficult to tell the difference between those sort of things. Like everything kind of flowed really well. Whereas Kiwami 2 is very much a PS2 game. Like it's
still got those same mechanics, is it?
Yeah, I mean it's fine. I'm enjoying it. Yakuza 2 is a good game.
Do you think the new engine though has graphically enhanced it a lot?
Oh, massively. Yeah. I mean, it's at the point where, like the other day, I was thinking about sort of our Game of the Year discussions and other people's Game of the Year discussions, and even individual people were like, "What's my Game of the Year?" And usually the Game of the Years are boiled down to, first of all, is the game I've liked this year new? And I feel like things like Yakuza Kiwami 2 and Resident Evil 2 that's coming out next year, they're starting to blur the lines between remake and new game.
Yeah, I mean, last year we had quite a bit of discussion before our Game of the Year podcast.
Yakuza in particular.
Yeah.
As well. With
about that sort of stuff.
Yakuza Kiwami. And obviously Yakuza 0, but that was different because that just came out late over here. But it's a discussion that we need to have again moving forward, because Yakuza Kiwami 2, while it is that PS2 game, there are so many changes. It's so different to the original. What are some
of the other sort of changes that you've got, apart from graphics, obviously?
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you're talking about a new game, you would describe a new game as something that looks good with modern technology, whatever the art style, whether it's an indie art style or whatever, something that obviously has released this year, and something where the gameplay is modern. On those three counts, Yakuza Kiwami 2 hits all three boxes. It's just the fact that its template is based on a PS2 game. I mean, the fighting style is it's Yakuza 6, But...
So has the fighting style changed a lot from the PS2 version?
So I never played the PS2 version.
Okay.
But I know it has changed. That's for sure. I mean, the fighting style is basically Yakuza 6. There's more of an emphasis on weapons in Kiwami 2, because you can store weapons in Kiwami 2, whereas you couldn't in 6.
Yeah.
Although you can't... if you beat everyone up, you can't store weapons once you've hit the last person. So
collect your weapons before you hit everyone.
Yeah, collect your weapons before you have the last hit. But no, I mean, it's a good game. I wouldn't... If you're just coming into the Yakuza series, I wouldn't recommend starting there. Has to be 0 you start with. I would even say 6. Starting at 6 before Kiwami 2.
Oh, you've got to start chronologically though, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do.
Honest.
Yeah, but I think
start with 0.
Yakuza 6 is a wonderful entry point for the series. Well, Okay, not wonderful because 0's the point, but it's a good entry point. 6 is.
It's not a bad place to start.
Because it's a very modern game. Very, very, very good. And I will be fighting hard for it in our Game of the Year discussions at the end of the year. But yeah, Kiwami 2 is good. It is good, but it is a PS2 game. Yakuza 6 feels structurally like a PS4 game. Kiwami 2 is still at its base a PS2 structured game, which isn't a bad thing, but it's a little bit jarring at times because it is so structured in dungeon, slight free roam, dungeon, slight free roam, dungeon, slight free